When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.
Welcome back to the Twinspires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hanson to look back at Belmont Stakes weekend at Saratoga. We had the third leg of the Triple Crown, which we'll start off with in our show today, talking Sovereignty's win. We'll also look at Good Cheer's first career loss in the Acorn, and as always, what else caught our eye from the weekend. James, let's start with the Belmont Stakes. We have Sovereignty now the winner of the first and the third legs of the Triple Crown. He, of course, Connections opted to skip the second leg of the Triple Crown. What were your takeaways from the Belmont Stakes and Sovereignty getting that win?
Well, my main takeaway is Sovereignty is better than I gave him credit for off of that win in the Kentucky Derby. I thought that was a massive effort, a leave no doubt type performance. I mean, he's the best 3-year-old in the land, or at least right now. Without doubt. And he, the race came back real fast too. But I'm just going to say this about Sovereignty. I can even remember his first 2 races in his career, the Street Sense, even the Fountain of Youth. He's closing from far back. And he's like a deep, sustained one-run closer. And in this race, and even in the Florida Derby, he's shown that he's not only improving in terms of just as, how fast he's running and how well he's running, but he's improving in terms of tactical ability. He was actually second after a quarter mile, a length back of Rodriguez. And at no point in call during the Belmont Stakes on Saturday was Sovereignty ever more than a length and a half back of the pace setter Rodriguez. He is racing up close. He's showing tactical ability. I think if he's no long. I think if the paces roll hot and he gets a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic last year, he'll drop further off the pace and come with one massive, huge late run. But if you're not going to get that hot pace set up like we saw in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year or at the Churchill Downs in the Kentucky Derby, he's going to race up close. So I just came away so impressed by him. It's really hard to see him, any of these 3-year-olds, at least right now at this point in the summer, beating him moving forward. And he's going to be, he's got a chance to keep progressing towards the Breeders' Cup Classic in the fall and be the horse to beat in that race. I'm not ready to say that yet because there's still some decent older horses out there, but that was a huge, huge performance from a really, really good horse. And I think he's, I think that this year's group of 3-year-olds is really strong, one of the better ones we've seen in a while. I'll also say this about journalism. I came up, not only did Sovereignty run really well, but journalism is 3.5 lengths clear of Baeza in third. He was just second best on the day. But I don't think there's any doubt that there's a change in tactics coming with him. I mean, Junior Alvarado even said it right after the Belmont. He said, once I got a chance to put him right behind journalism just to make sure he has a target turning for home, I know he likes to know what he's supposed to do. And you can see this. This is the second race in a row between these 2 extremely classic 3-year-olds where journalism gets the first run on him, has the lead in upper stretch, and Sovereignty goes and gets him. And I would think next time journalism's going to be if these horses square off again this fall. I think he's going to look to perhaps take back and make more of a stretch run instead of maybe have Sovereignty as a target next time, which is going to be a potential given how much more tactical ability Sovereignty has shown.
Vance, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with James. Sovereignty is the top 3-year-old colt in the country. There's no question about it. And I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody, including journalism, to equal the number of wins he already has against the rest of the crop going forward the rest of the year, just because there's going to be, at most 2 or 3 races left for Sovereignty until through the rest of the season. And James brought up at the very end of his comments something I was going to bring up about the tactics involving journalism and Sovereignty. As James said, journalism took the first crack, turning for home in the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont. He was the target rather than being the targeter in both races, and it just didn't work out for him. It'll be interesting to see whenever these two match up again, whether journalism is able to hold back as long as Sovereignty has in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown, whether he can take aim at Sovereignty first. I think that might be the only way journalism can probably close the gap against Sovereignty in a race like the Travers, if he chooses to run in it, or even in the Breeders' Cup Classic on his home court of Del Mar. So it'll be interesting to see how the pace scenario and how the race on a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic will unfold the next time these two square off. But until then, Sovereignty, unless something, strange results happen in either the Jim Dandy or the Travers, I think Sovereignty is going to stay on top of this division up until Breeders' Cup Day. And I think one other thing I'd want to mention, Bill Mott basically said he's going to go the Jim Dandy Travers route. Sovereignty ran a very, very fast race in the Belmont, much higher than average than we've seen in recent years. And it's unfortunate that this generation of horsemen wouldn't even consider running Sovereignty in a race like the Whitney, because if you go back to the late 1980s, we had 2 outstanding 3-year-olds, Java Gold and Easy Goer, step out of the division, prep in the Whitney for the Travers, and they both won both races. Sovereignty, I think, showed in the Belmont that he's almost as fast as some of the best older horses in the land right now. And if I owned him, which I don't, but if I did, I would take the sporting chance and run him in the Whitney, prep for the Travers in that, because the Jim Dandy's is just going to end up being perhaps a 4 or 5 horse field at this point.
I don't have much more to add. I think Frank Miramati said it best. When Sovereignty was coming down the stretch, he left no doubt who the best 3-year-old in the world is. And he was my Belmont pick and my Derby pick. Just got to throw that one out there.
Congrats.
Thank you. But he
And a good payoff on Saturday.
Not much of a payoff. I'll say the superfecta, I think.
Well, $7 in that field
Well,
with his credentials, I think, is very good.
The super
Yeah,
was
he could have been
definitely
even
not my
money
pick,
the way
I'll
he
tell you
ran,
that.
Ashley. 5 to 2 is a fair price on it when you look at how well he ran.
He did impress me a lot, though. I mean, I was expecting big things. He has such a good closing kick, but he did come away with a career best 111 Brisnet speed figure and a career high 117 late pace rating. And the way he just ran away from journalism in that stretch run, it really did just tell me he is the best horse out there in the 3-year-old division right now. And of course, he didn't run in the Preakness, but Bill Mott said he had no regrets. They did what was best for the horse. And when it comes to history, Thunder Gulch is the last horse who won the Derby and the Belmont and not the Preakness. So that was way back in 1995. So it took a long time to get here. And who knows what would have happened if Sovereignty had run that second leg. But, he did prove himself in the 2 that he showed up for in the Triple Crown. So I was happy to see it. And he continues to seem like he's getting better and better. So I very much look forward to seeing what he does in his next start and where we see him in the Breeders' Cup, hopefully at the end of the year, what he can do in the Classic if he gets there.
Hey, I'm glad you brought up that Triple Crown with him, because, I came away from it thinking he would have been the 14th Triple Crown winner. That's the way I came away from it. Bill Mott had to work. He said he worked him on Preakness morning, and he said, I had to do something with him. I think he could have easily run that day, come back 3 weeks later. He'd only run twice before the Derby since October. I don't think that the Derby took that much out of him. And I think he would have had a great chance to sweep the Triple Crown. And Vance was saying when journalism and Sovereignty run against each other, I do think that would have to be the Breeders' Cup Classic. Obviously, I love Vance's idea also, by the way, about the Whitney. I don't think it will happen, but I thought that would really be stepping outside of the box with Sovereignty. and at least in the modern era. And but Michael McCarthy's already said he wants to keep him at Del Mar. The Breeders' Cup's at Del Mar, so by all indications, Sovereignty will journalism will target the Pacific Classic, whereas Sovereignty's got these Jim Dandy, or got the Travers as his main goal and probably his last prep for the Breeders' Cup.
Well, we saw the Derby winner win on Belmont weekend, but we did not see the Kentucky Oaks winner get a victory over Belmont weekend. It was the first career loss for Good Cheer in her 8th career start. Licara went gate to wire in the Grade 1 Acorn, while Good Cheer seemed to struggle a little bit over a sloppy track. Vance, what did you think about Good Cheer's loss? What were your takeaways from that defeat?
Well, when the rains came Friday afternoon, I thought many of us thought that it would be even more of a slam dunk than it looked going into the race. Good Cheer having won over an off track at Churchill Downs, but she simply failed to fire. And I don't know if Brad Cox has come out exactly and given a proper excuse yet for why she didn't fire her best shot. She simply didn't. But as far as her position in the pecking order of the 3-year-old filly division, I still think she's on top given what she did in the Kentucky Oaks, and she had beaten Licara decisively in the Oaks, and this was just a turning of the tables. And I would expect Good Cheer to bounce back in the Coaching Club American Oaks and probably the Alabama too. I assume those are the 2 races she'll be targeting going forward. If you had to point to something, I did notice, looking back over her past performances, that she did concede Licara some winning experience at Saratoga. Licara had broken her maiden at the Spa last summer. Good Cheer didn't even turn in a published work at Saratoga until she shipped last week for the Acorn. She had done all of her prep work at Churchill Downs, and she's basically been running out of her backyards throughout her career. Into this point, she's been stabled at Churchill. She ran at Horseshoe Indianapolis first out, and then ran at Churchill several times in the fall and the spring, and then was based at Fairgrounds over the winter. So shipping for her actual race was kind of new to her going into the Acorn. Maybe that was an excuse. Maybe it wasn't. It's just something to think about, and the only thing I could come up with.
James,
Yeah.
do you have any excuses?
I had no excuses. I mean, I will say this. It wasn't like at the top of the stretch, she was in position to still make her run. I mean, for at least second. And I mean, she lost ground. I mean, she's like 4 turning for home, and she lost like lengths on the filly she was right there. I mean, she turns for home right next to Bless the Broken for the most part, and then just comes up completely empty from the top of the stretch to the wire. I mean, she could have easily made up this ground for at least second at this point. She still could have. So she just was a completely subpar performance where she didn't try at all in the stretch for whatever reason. I mean, if she had run second or third, it would have it would have been more like, hey, she just got beat, but she just didn't take the footing or whatever the issue was. I'll say this for Licara. Licara got everything her own way on the front end, and this race had a filly that was coming off a front-running wire-to-wire win and Shred the Gnar, an up-and-coming filly that had all this speed. She was going to be forwardly placed, in my mind, in the Acorn, Shred the Gnar. So when that filly scratched, it took away the other speed. It left Licara as a lone speed. Now, she had run poorly in 2 previous starts on wet tracks. So she was no slam dunk, given it was a sloppy track in the Acorn, and she cleared that hurdle no problem. But the thing with this is Licara, to me, it's like Vance said it right. I mean, Good Cheer has such an edge over her rivals; she can easily afford a loss at this point. And the thing with Licara is she would need to continue to be Good Cheer moving forward. But I don't have any confidence really in that aspect, because I still I got some questions in a 1.125 mile race if she's facing any pressure whatsoever that she's going to be able to run that same race we saw on Saturday. She still has to prove it to me. But the one thing about this 3-year-old filly division I'll mention real quick is that there's just no depth. I mean, we get past Good Cheer and Lacara, and who are we talking about is the third best 3-year-old dirt filly? Well, I'll tell you who I think it could easily be, as far as at least the ones that have stakes experience, and that could be Nitrogen. Nitrogen ran in the Wonder Again on Saturday's undercard off the turf. In her first 6 races, she ran her first 7 races. She ran exclusively on turf. She had never been on a main track. Nitrogen had it until that Wonder Again on Saturday, and she won that race by 17 lengths. So, I mean, she ran a mile in 136 flat and won by 17 lengths. So that filly obviously showed some ability, even though it was wet. She showed some ability to handle the main track, winning that off the turf Wonder Again. And it's a little bit, they're both trained by Mark Cassidy, Lacara and Nitrogen. But I still think there's a chance Nitrogen could be better than Lacara on dirt. And I'm just looking at the Acorn as a one-off performance for Good Cheer. Especially, she gets in a race next time with some pace. I won't be surprised at all to see her bounce back.
Well, I will say the 3-year-old filly division is about to get a little deeper because Godolphin and Brad Cox still have the juvenile filly champion Immersive, and she's back in action on Saturday in the Monomoy Girls Stakes at Churchill Downs, and she might come back the top dog again as she was last year as a 2-year-old. We'll see how she does on Saturday, but I think she's going to add a lot of depth to this division in the second half of the season.
That's a great point. Thanks, Vance.
James, you brought up the scratch of Shred the Gnar, and when that happened, I did think that it kind of led to an advantage for Lacara. It had been speed favoring kind of leading up to Saturday's races at Belmont at Saratoga. So when the other speed came out, I thought that Lacara would be able to go gate to wire here. That was the plan in the Kentucky Oaks, and she had a little bit of a challenge from Tenma that day. No one really challenged her for the early lead in the Acorn, and she was able to hold on and won by multiple lengths in the Acorn. So Brad Cox did say that he didn't really have an excuse because Good Cheer, like you had mentioned, had run over a sloppy track before and had won. So she just didn't have her best day. And I think you brought up a good point, Vance, with her not having recorded a work at Saratoga really until that week she came and got her experience on the track. So maybe that, played against her for that particular race, but she is still the top filly in the division. And I think Lacara has proven that she really is a need the lead type. She does her best running when she has an easy lead. She does have that one off the pace win in the Pocahontas, but aside from that, her last several efforts, clearly Connections want her to go to the front. And that to me makes her very vulnerable down the line because she's not going to have an easy lead every single time. So there'll be races where she does get to win like she did in the Acorn, but for the most part, I would say that Good Cheer has an advantage somewhat with her versatility as a late closer, but also, tactically, I'm sure she will change things up going forward too. And I think we just draw a line through this Acorn because that was just not the type of filly that we had seen in the past.
I noticed that Brad Cox said in the quotes after the race, he mentioned Graveyard of Champions. So it's good to get a little reference. He wasn't making an excuse of the wet track either. He just was like saying she just didn't run, Graveyard of Champions, blah, blah, blah. I just thought it was interesting. He was like cognizant of, hey, strange things can happen up here at Saratoga.
Well, let's move over to what else caught our eye from the weekend. A lot of other stakes action happened at Belmont at Saratoga. So, James, what stood out to you?
Well, I'm going to mention these. Well, first off, in recent years, we've had Elite Power win back-to-back editions of the Breeders' Cup Sprint. But even in those years, the competition wasn't there for it. And the Breeders' Cup Sprint, to me, has been one of the least anticipated race for quite a while because the race just hasn't had depth and quality. All these terrific sprinter type fields. I mean, last year a horse called Bird Tornado, who's won one of his last 5 starts, ran second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So I just think that race has been lost some of its luster over the last decade, perhaps. And I'm more excited than ever for this year's sprint edition. And we saw some really talented one-turn types, I thought, Saturday over the weekend at Saratoga. I'll start with Met Mile winner Raging Torrent. What a big performance on the lead in the Met Mile to beat Fierceness. Coming up, last year's Travers winner, Jim Dandy winner. We know Fierceness. He broke his maiden at Saratoga. He was 3 for 3 over the track. He loved that track. He was coming off a track record performance. And Raging Torrent just took it right to him and everybody else from the start and led wire to wire to win by 2.5 lengths. He's gotten really good as a 4-year-old for Doug O'Neill. It's important to remember last year as a 3-year-old, he recorded his first stakes win on June 30th last year in the Maxfield Stakes. So he hadn't even been a year since he recorded his first stakes win. He's getting good right now, Raging Torrent. Now, he's won his last 6 wins have come at 7 or 7.5 or a mile on Saturday, and he's over 2 in his last 2 starts at 6 furlongs. But there's still going to be the potential for him to cut back, I think. It'll be interesting to see what Doug O'Neill does. I think he'll point him for a race like a 7 furlong Grade 1 Forgo on Travers undercard. Next, I'm going to go to Bookham Dano. Bookham Dano ran a huge race in the True North on Saturday. He beat Mulligan, who I thought ran a winning race. He just got beat by a better horse. The top 2 are really, really good right now. Bookham Dano for Derek Ryan and Mulligan for Rudolph Brissett. Really came away impressed. Bookham Dano got a career best 104 Brisnet speed rating. It was a massive effort. And, he's set for a good fall as well. Next, I'll go to Patch Adams. He won the Woody Stevens on Saturday. That's his first stakes victory, his second straight win since cutting back off a pair of 2-turn stakes attempts earlier this year. Look, Patch Adams by Into Mischief and has all this stamina in his female family. He looked like a 2-turn type to me at Keeneland, breaking his maiden last fall, but he's a 1-turn, supremely talented individual. I love how he drew away late in this Woody Stevens. He's getting really good right now for Brad Cox. He got a 104 speed rating. And then finally, I'm going to mention General Partner. He ran in an allowance race Saturday. He won it by 2 lengths. He went off like the 3-2 favorite. Looked really good. He got a 103 Brisnet speed rating. General Partner has won his last 3 starts at Saratoga and gotten triple-digit numbers in all 3 of them. His last 4 starts outside of Saratoga, he's 0-4. So the one thing General Partner has going for him is that he is going to have the AG Vanderbilt and the Forgo at Saratoga coming up this summer. He's got a chance to step into some stakes competition and maybe make a input. So it maybe play a factor. And as well, I mean, this division has Nisos in it, who is going to try 2 turns. But if it doesn't work out at 2 turns, he could be aiming for the sprint. My frame off of that Churchill Downs win is going to the Foster. If he doesn't run well in the Foster, Pletcher might be looking to cut him back, given how well he ran in a sprint. And we also have Booth out there that's won 4 straight stakes for Steve Asmussen, including a real impressive win on the Preakness undercard in a Grade 3. The sprint division right now, guys, is really loaded, I think, and it's got depth and quality this year. And finally, one more thing. I know I'm taking forever, but Deterministic won the Manhattan, the Grade 1 Manhattan on Saturday. I was all over Integration. I rooted as hard as I could throughout that stretch, and as soon as they hit the wire, Frank Miramati, he said he could capture the thrill of that stretch run, and when they hit the wire, he said, "Congratulations, Miguel Clement." And I got to tell you, I could be a big sentimentalist, but that really meant a lot to me because Christophe Clement died 2 weeks ago. Frank Miramati knows what that New York racing community has been going through over the last couple weeks with the loss too soon from cancer of 59-year-old Christophe Clement. And I just thought it was really that emotional, like kind of moment that, that I love. I love it. I love the sappy stuff. And I thought it was really great for Clement and everybody associated with the Clement barn to get this big win. And let me just say, Deterministic, he ran an off-the-turf allowance at Keeneland, ran second. He has now won the Hill Prince, Fort Marcy, and Manhattan in a row. This is an up-and-coming turf horse. He earned that win on Sunday, and he's getting good right now.
And Miguel Clement had the third place finisher, Farbridge, who probably had a chance if they had kept it the original distance. They had to cut it back with the turf shakeup. So it was a shorter edition of that race. But I think with a little bit extra ground, maybe Farbridge would have gotten the win. But either way, two good chances. Actually, there were three chances for Miguel Clement in that race, but two of them put in a really good race.
It was a thrilling stretch run. Integration just barely came up short, but that speed hadn't played, I didn't think, that well on the turf once they got all that rain. We saw Key Beach just cough up a clear lead in the stretch. So he was really game, I thought. Like I said, Integration, boy, he came with a big run late. He's getting Integration could keep building upon this performance. I thought it was a real positive, even though he lost. And, these two horses are getting real good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you brought up the Manhattan being cut in distance from 1 3/16 to 1 1/8, and I think that certainly cost Integration the victory there, that change in distance over 24 hours. So I would think that Integration, I think it would be a good idea to, if Shug McGahee stretched him back out again, because that horse was getting really good late last year, stretching out to races like the Red Smith, going 1 3/8. Perhaps we'll see him in the Sword Dancer next time.
Well, Vance, what was your top performer from the other stakes action?
Well, besides Sovereignty's win in the Belmont, the race I was most impressed with was in the Better Roses for filly and mare sprinters, and Ways and Means just dominated that field. It was her third win in 4 career starts at Saratoga. We know she loves Saratoga. Her only loss over the track was a rough trip second a couple of seasons ago in the Spinaway, and here she just blows the field away at odds of 1-2. It was a highly expected victory, but to win off like this by 6-7 lengths, I think that was probably unexpected. But this filly has just really, really gotten good. Much improved, I think, over her 3-year-old form. You see the final time there for 7 furlongs, 1:21.11. So now, awesome performance by her. She earned a career best 107 Bristnet speed rating, which I think was her 6th triple-digit speed rating in her last 7 starts. The one exception, I think, was the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint last fall at Del Mar. So we know she's a great filly in New York. She hasn't quite reproduced that form on the road, so that's going to be an issue for her as she marches back to Del Mar for a Breeders' Cup, which she lost as the 2-1 favorite last year. But until then, I think she's going to continue to put up some sparkling efforts. Races like the Ballerina, the Gallon Bloom are going to be her prep races, I think, for the Breeders' Cup. So kudos to this filly for running an outstanding race and dazzling the audience this weekend.
She was so good as a 2-year-old. It's hard to. I'm almost thinking Ways and Means is like a 5-year-old mare, but I mean, she's just been started in her 4-year-old season. I do think, based on that effort, you make the argument that she's improved this year, and she improved off her seasonal debut. I mean, she ran really well. I thought to be third to Copian, and I love to see her move forward off of that.
I was going to say there were a lot of triple-digit Bristnet speed figures from winners at Belmont at Saratoga this weekend, and almost all of them that we've talked about who did reach the winner's circle had career highs. Almost all of the ones that we've talked about. But I will mention AG Bullet, who did not have a career high, but ran a great race, getting her first Grade 1 win in the Jaipur this weekend facing the boys. And she won by 2 lengths in this 5.5 furlong sprint that was postponed to Sunday because of the heavy rains that moved 2 of those turf stakes over to Sunday, this one being a Breeders' Cup win in your in. So she earned a berth to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And she appeared in that race last year and was beaten by less than a length when third to, what was the horse that beat Cogburn? Now I'm forgetting. Starlust? Is that the name of the horse? That won Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint, yes. Very unexpected winner of that race. Cogburn, I think we all thought was going to win that, but AG Bullet was right there. Just a little bit, 3/4 of a length off the winner, and now gets to go back to the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint at Del Mar. I was kind of doubting her coming into this race. I thought she was better at a little bit longer, around 6.5, and I played against her in the Unbridled Sydney for that reason, and she didn't have her best day. She was boxing along the rail in the Unbridled Sydney, but this time around she came out and proved herself at 5.5 furlongs, made it look easy. She beat Think Big, who was the post-time favorite on a 3-win streak with 2 grade 2s in that three-win streak. And then My Boy Prince, who was the Canadian champion 2-year-old back in 2023, he finished second in that race. So she beat some really good horses, and now looking to become, I believe it would be the 6th female horse to win the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. The last one we saw do that was Caravel in 2022 at Keeneland. So maybe she can make history. It seems like now 5.5 furlongs certainly is in her wheelhouse. And her trainer did say that he always wanted to stretch her out to 6.5 or a mile. So he even thought maybe longer. But now watching that race, you got to respect her at 5.5, and be cool to see her make some history later this year.
You're right. She did have a troubled trip in that Unbridled Sydney. I mean, if she can get the positioning like she did on Sunday, yeah. I mean, that was a really good finish. That was a good tab. Well, I don't know. Did he tab her like on the jury? I thought. Well, I don't know.
No. Or I played against her in the Unbridled Sydney, but
All right.
actually it was Darren. I think Darren liked her in the jury
Karen, I
last
think,
week.
liked her. We talked
Yeah.
about her briefly on the jury, and and part of the reason to like her was because of that troubled trip in the Unbridled Sydney. And yeah, I mean, that was just a really terrific effort. And she's going to probably, now come back and get a prep at Del Mar, I would think.
Well, I think Richard Baltus mentioned bringing her back to Kentucky Downs, where she won that ladies turf sprint last year. So that might be where we see her. And
Okay.
he said he only wanted one more race likely before she goes to the Breeders' Cup.
Now that's a risky path because no Breeders' Cup race winner has prepped at Kentucky Downs. Now I think the racing has gotten a lot better at Kentucky Downs in just like the last 5, 6, 7 years, so that could change. But with Cogburn going down last year, it's going to be something you're at least a little bit cognizant of.
It's certainly a different track to prep for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. I will be out next week, so we have Darren Zacali filling in as a special guest host of the Roundtable, and we will talk plenty of stakes action, and yeah, we'll see you then.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.